Hello friends, it's Isabel here. I hope you're all doing well. I am coming on today to do my response to the lovely Candy from Candy Soul and Soil, who created the fabulous 10 Curiosity Decks tag. When I first saw this video, I really liked it and I really enjoyed watching people's responses, and I felt like it was something I wanted to get involved with. But I began to sort of think through my collection and realised that, you know, as I was watching the videos, I haven't got that many decks that are either gruesome, macabre, curious, unique, and all these different things. So I sort of shelved it a little bit, but I was still really keen to give the tag a go. And so I sort of stepped away from what other people were doing, and I looked up out of interest of what a curiosity cabinet was classed as. You know, I know in my head I can see a corner cabinet in my old family lounge at home, and that cabinet was full of all sorts of bits and pieces and knickknacks. It might be full of the precious things, the things that we don't want to get rid of, the things that we mean something to us or have a value. It might be full of the unusual things, the strange little things that we keep and we feel are necessary to keep and to look after. A bit like my crystal collection here, you know, the beautiful, the unusual, perhaps the precious. And it got me thinking about, how do I define the decks that I would put in a curiosity cabinet? I'd love to have some more slightly unique and unusual decks, but I know that quite a lot of the decks I've seen like that, I wouldn't use. I'd keep them, they'd just come and they'd just sit there, because if I want to use them, I have to be able to read and to understand them. And so I am going to do my response to this tag, having waffled as usual. And my collection of decks is a little bit of a mixture. I've cheated slightly. I do that, don't I? I don't think it's the first time. For a couple of my picks, I've got like a little collection or a couple of decks that go together, because I wouldn't separate them if I put them in the cupboard. And my decks range from those that are perhaps a little bit unusual in their portrayals, you know, those kind of not gruesome but a bit bonkers kind of curious characters off and out. Perhaps something where it's a bit more of a fantasy world, so curious world, thinking like Alice in Wonderland, curiouser and curiouser. Perhaps those where there may be a little bit more unique or harder to come by, or those that have some preciousness to me in some way. So that's kind of where I'm heading with the tag. Just a little aside, I have had a horrific cold the last week or so, and I'm still suffering with a bit of a chesty cough. So if either my voice is a bit croaky or I suddenly stop to have a coughing fit, I apologise now. But let's see what I've got for my top 10 curiosity decks. So for the first deck, I'm going to go with, mine are a mixture, by the way, of tarot, oracle and playing cards. And I'm going to start with a playing card deck. And this is probably my most wacky deck in many respects. This is the Patrick Valenza of Deviant Moon fame. This is his Royal Mischief Transformation playing cards. Now, I've shown these, I think, on another video. These cards I got in the autumn, last autumn. I saw someone using them on another channel and I really liked them. Strangely, I'm not drawn to getting the Deviant Moon decks at the moment. I find some of the portrayals in those decks don't gel with me. But for some reason I really liked these. So they come in a little hard box. They're a lovely little set of cards. I really like them. I don't know what I've done with them, but there we go. They have this lovely little edging that's a bit sort of shiny, it's like a gun metallic grey, like a gunmetal. They're a lovely set of cards basically. And true to form, the characters and portrayals on these cards can be a little bit bonkers and a little bit curious, and that's why I would put them in my cabinet of curiosities, because they're a little bit bonkers, they're a little bit out there, and a bit weird. So this would go on the shelf of my cabinet that had those weird and wacky things. Weirdly enough, there aren't that many of those in my collection. I'm not sure if my camera's actually focusing. Apologies. I'm just flicking through regardless here. So, my first deck for my curiosity cabinet. I quite like layering this up, particularly at Halloween. It was quite good sort of Samhain to layer up with sort of Halloween tarot, that sort of thing. So that's the Royal Mischief Transformation playing cards by Patrick Valenza. They are available mass market, by the way. There's an older version. This is the slightly newer US Games version. I think in the original version, if I remember rightly, not all the cards were illustrated in the same way. I think someone else has got a video, maybe Simon, about that. Another set of playing cards, my next deck for the Curiosity Cabinet is this. This is the James R. Eads Portals, Open Portals playing card set. Now, I got this on eBay. It was a bit of a random find. It came, I spotted it on eBay and thought, oh, I'd give it a go. It's a first edition, and it's the, he did different editions and different colorings. I just saw it on there and I recognised the name from Light Visions because I'd been looking at the Kickstarter and it was a bargain price, so I thought I'd give it a go. And I put this in because it's a little bit mad. I really like this deck. I worked with it a little bit earlier in the year. I layered it up with some I layered it up with the Transient Light Tarot. Actually, it worked quite well with them. Each of the cards has a picture. They've got portals. You've got all these different, like, portal the rainbow, portal for the sunset, portal for the lilies. Then you've got this kind of god of life and death. So each of these is, you've got a myth there, spirit magic, portal for family. So the 1 to 10 are portals. Then you've got these gods for the jacks and queens and kings. And then I think the jokers and the aces are other things as well. You can actually, there is 2 guidebooks for this. That's in Myth of Kuzo. So it comes with 2 little guide leaflets. One of them is the leaflet for the playing cards, and it tells you what the portals are. So it gives you like the so here, portal for the child, it tells you about that, downside, upside, and it gives you a keyword. And then there's also a game that you can play, and that's on this instruction leaflet. And this game is called, oh, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's basically open portals. So it's actually a game, so you can do portals or you can use it as an oracle and playing card deck. So it's quite a nice little deck, and I found it would work really well for layering, because you know, you could kind of get something, okay, this portal, what's this about, what are we looking at here, and you could then use that to focus a reading, or you could use it as a clarifier for a reading. But it's not a deck that I'd really seen or come across, and it's very unusual, so I think I'd put that in my cabinet of curiosities as well. Next, the cabinet of curiosities, what shall I go for next? So next I'm going to go for one that I put in because it's, I hadn't realised at the time I got it, but it's like harder to come by now, and is kind of means something to me, and I've shown this deck before. This is the Healing Waves Tarot. I got it as an indie deck on Indiegogo. At the time, it was like my first backing of a new deck. I've talked about on other videos about how this deck has so much that draws me in, so much meaning, so much that kind of I can relate to in terms of family holidays. I really love this. The sea and the beach is a place that I feel very grounded and very connected when I'm sort of sat by the sea and just listening to it or whatever. It's quite a special kind of place for me, and I absolutely love this deck. The reason I put it in my cabinet of curiosities is because the initial print run was limited, basically because it was, I think because it was on Indiegogo, not a lot of people saw it, and now there are loads of people who are after it, so it's become a little bit of a, you know, a special deck in that sense. So I'd put it in the cabinet as one that's precious for me emotionally and sentimentally, but I'd also put it in the cabinet because, you know, it's a bit of a a precious one in terms of its availability and things. It is a beautiful deck. I have to say I've not actually read much with it. However, I did start doing some work on it just to kind of get to know the cards a bit more, and realised how beautifully, that's such a good sun card. I absolutely love that card. Look at that little turtle. How clear the messages came across to me in these cards. I'm not normally a big fan of cards of mermaids, but I like these subtle ones. It isn't like a deck that you talk about diversity in the figures, but it's mostly a nature and a sea-based deck. And I looked at these earth cards and looked at how they related to sort of the meanings. I mean, look at the nurturing nature of that turtle and her brood. Isn't that beautiful? Nurturing but setting them free. Everything's been sorted. You've got all the things you need. Now go and look, and then, you know, we're all sorted. I can look after you. I can protect you, but I'm here if you need me. Well, that's what I think anyway. So I love this. I really love this deck. So I'd put this in my cabinet, the Healing Waves Tarot, because it's precious to me, and because it's precious because it's now harder to come by. The bag that came with it, you can't put it in the box, and it's a really tight fit. But I took it away with us and took it out of the box, and it seems to protect it quite well because it's lovely and velvety. Another couple of decks that I put in for that same reason have become quite precious to me, and that's my Oak Ash and Thorn and Smoke Ash and Embers. So a lot of people love these decks. Some people don't get on with them, and that's fine. I didn't get the Oak Ash and Thorn first time around. I pre-ordered the Smoke Ash and Embers and got this as part of the package. And I'm so glad I chose to do that. I've been working with this a little bit lately, and it just absolutely love it. It reminds me of stories I read when I was a child, or my dad read to me. Things like Watership Down, Enid Blyton stories, Dick King-Smith, you know, all stories as well with animals and characters that are animals. I absolutely love dragons. I feel a real kind of draw to dragons for some reason. And so I think I'd put these in as a pair, as being decks that are kind of special to me. Again, decks that, you know, I keep for their nature of them being so special to me. I'd want to keep them in the cabinet to keep them safe. So that's why they'd go in the cabinet of curiosity. I also think as well that, you know, some of the nature of the artwork is a bit different, you know, so keeping your natural world as precious and protected. You've seen lots of these cards before, I'm sure. Amazing, isn't it, how sometimes when you flick through cards for a video like this, you just see one and stop. I've stopped on the Death card in this deck, and I just think, isn't that beautiful? This does remind me very much kind of that whole, I don't know if you know Watership Down, but quite a sad moments in that story. It always scared me as a child. But look at that, the butterflies of transformation, you know. Oh, yes. So I love, that's a really cool Hermit card as well. I really love that Hermit card. So yeah, so I'd put my Oak Ash and Thorn and Smoke Ash and Embers in the curiosity cabinet, as being because my cabinet would need to have things in that were special to me and precious, so they go on my precious shelf with the Healing Waves. Another deck that would probably go on the precious shelf is this deck. This is the Musical Tarot I'm about to get out. I got this on eBay on a whim, and then discovered that it's actually was a more special deck than I realised. I got it because I have an affinity to music. I'm musical. I've got a concert this weekend that my husband and I are playing in. When I got it for that very reason. I didn't realise that it was a Mengazi limited edition one. It's an unusual deck because it's on this kind of art card stock. It's not standard, and it's a tarocco, so there's another way of reading it as well. But I would put this in because this one, I don't read with this at the moment because I don't want to damage it. I don't want to shuffle it. And this would go in onto my precious shelf as a deck that, you know, is out of print, is not one easy to come by, would need to be protected. So it would go alongside Healing Waves in that respect, I think. But it's also unusual. It's not a deck you see because of that very reason. It's not one I knew existed until I sort of by chance came across it. It has some very good portrayals though as well. It's very different. you know, and it associates with musical works. So yeah, so this is the musical tarot. When you get further down, you get the suits have are more pippish, but they use these sort of musical associations. So you've got violins, you've got hunting horns, you've got a French horn, and that's important because my husband plays the French horn. You've got the little mandolin as well, and then you've got this sort of building. So you've got these very kind of meaning to me again. So that's the musical tarot, Tarocchi da Musica. I keep it in a random box that fits it with a bit of a cloth because it's not standard tarot sized. So, and I wanted to keep it somewhere. So this is a hand cream box that I had in my cupboard. So it fits with a bit of a cloth at the bottom. It slots in here, and I actually keep a bit of crystal with it to keep it safe. So that's the musical tarot that would go in for its nature of being something a little bit more precious and special. So we're on 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was halfway, folks. Halfway through this cabinet of curiosities. So you can see that my cabinet doesn't have lots of macabre things in. It doesn't have lots of unique things in. It's a real mixture. Another one that kind of what should we go for next? So I think I would probably in my cabinet of curiosities put my tarot of the magical forests. This lives in a Kelly Bear pouch, and it was Kelly Bear who loves this deck, and I was persuaded to buy it. Again, good deal on eBay, authentic deck. I love this deck, and it is weird and wacky, really. You know, these animals, I'm not normally drawn to the big eyes, but something about these animals, this deck really reads well for me. I was using it earlier in the year when I first got it, and it's just, I absolutely love that strength card. Isn't that cute? So I really love this deck, and it reads well for me, but it's just a bit out there, you know. It's really strange, to be honest, you know, and a lot of people, apologies, had to pause because I got interrupted. Yeah, so where was I? So this is a deck that I think is just a bit wacky, and that's why I'd put this in my cabinet of curiosities. It's just so bonkers as a deck. It's really cute, but really bonkers as well. It's certainly one of my more wacky decks for sure. So that's the Tarot of the Magical Forest, which I keep in my Kelly Bear pouch. And that's a wacky one. So talking of wacky, another couple of decks I think I'd put in for that same reason are, first of all, this is going to surprise some people, I think, because this isn't a deck that's out of print. This isn't a deck that's precious. This is the Labyrinth Tarot. And to me, this would go in the Curiosity cabinet for the wackiness of the characters. Obviously, it's based on the Labyrinth film, and if anyone knows the Labyrinth film, that is so flippin' wacky in itself. And that's why I put this in my cabinet of curiosities, because there's so, you know, again, curiouser and curiouser, said Alice. Obviously some of these, but you know, when you look at these cards, they are fairly wacky. And I suppose if you don't know the film, you'd be like, what on earth? But thinking of the world of goblins and, you know, these characters, I would certainly put this out there as one that would fit that title of curious and wacky and bizarre. It's not out of print, it's not precious in that respect. The other reason it go in, I think, is because of the memory it holds. I talked about this in another tag where I used it as my sort of deck that reminded me of family, because this, you know, film is precious to me in the sense of the memories it brings of my past and childhood and stuff. It's one of my favourite films, and I think that, you know, therefore the wackiness of this and the nature of it justifies putting it in the cabinet of curiosities. They have pippish, unfortunately it is pippish, so but it does have illustrated courts with, again, some bonkers characters. So yeah, so that is the more mass market Labyrinth Tarot, which I got last year, which I put in my cabinet for the wackiness of the characters in it. And along the same lines, another deck that I would put in the cabinet is my Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud. So I had this pouch made for it because the box was driving me bonkers. When the pouch came, it was too big, but I've put a notebook, and the intention is that I'm going to do some study on this deck. Just haven't done that yet. So this is the Fairies Oracle, which a lot of people know. It's not the world's best cardstock, it's a bit flimsy, but it goes with the Labyrinth because Brian Froud did a lot of the Labyrinth characters. And you've got these kind of, you know, goblin-y backs here. And then I'm just going to get past these to some of the more character ones. And then you start seeing sort of these, I mean, you know, how curious are these characters? They're just wacky and bonkers, you know. So I think this would have to go in that cabinet as well, just for the sheer nature of the characters on these cards. Apologies, there's a little bit of nudity. I hope people can cope with that. I mean, look at that, honestly. So yeah, so another one, this is the Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud, which a lot of people know. As I say, my intention with this deck is that at some point I'm going to do a kind of dive and work with the cards just a bit. But that would certainly go in my cabinet of curiosities, just the nature of the characters. Out of interest, this was actually, I bought this, there was a couple of companies online that you can send a picture and you get them printed. So this, I took a snap of one of the cards, so this is actually on a card, and had it made. But as I say, the measurements were not quite right, but it was quite a cost-effective way of getting. I quite like zip pouches, so I can't remember, it was something like the Redbubble or one of those sites. So those are kind of wackier character decks. Now I've just got a collection and then one other deck that so number 9, they're not in any particular order, by the way. So this deck has literally just come in this week. This is the Celtic Oracle by John Matthews. Again, the reason for putting this deck in, even though I've barely opened it, I literally have like opened the box and gone, oh yes, is because it is quite hard to come by. The story goes, and I think I'll do a separate video on this actually, but the story goes that I was buying some second-hand books on eBay for my son about cricket, and they had an offer on, and I was hunting around. You know, it's one of those buy 3 get 5% off. You know what we're like as a community, any kind of offer's a good offer. And I came across, don't know how I came across this, and I was drawn to the picture because I'm very drawn to a lot of this Celtic imagery and stone circles and things. Just, I'm a bit obsessed with them at the moment. And I started doing some exploration. Whenever I see like something like that, I always explore to see, is it really a good deal or not? And it turned out that this is actually hard to come by. It's not in print, or it's like really expensive. And I got it for less than £10, which, when I looked, was a bargain, and that's why it came. And I haven't really looked at it yet, but therefore it would go in my cabinet of curiosities because it's quite hard to come by, and a bit like a couple of the others, therefore rare. And also because of the nature of it, I think, you know, I have a thing about the Celtic imagery. I've not really looked through it, but you know, when you look at some of the cards in it, they're not the most usual cards you come across. So I do think that I put this in my cabinet for that reason. Maybe it doesn't fit with other people's thoughts of cabinets of curiosity, I don't know. But I think that for the sheer fact that I've managed to get a bargain on something which is now quite hard to come by. Look at this guidebook, by the way. Flipping, going to take me ages to go through this. It's got songs in it. To be honest, I only looked at lots of resources. I mean, this is like 225 pages of interests about Celtic Oracle, so I'm going to have a look at that. But that's going in my cabinet for now. It might get replaced. That's the thing I think about these things, is in 6 months' time, I reckon if I came back and did this tag, there'd be other cards in there. And for my final pick, I've gone for a set of decks, and I've gone for a set of decks that I'm putting in my cabinet because of the curious nature of the world that they are based in. And that is my set of decks from Phil and Jackie Lovesey of Matlock the Hair and Wandwood and their characters. So I have done a video on these decks. These are the decks that are based around Matlock the Hair's world. These are Wandwood. They are based in and around Winchett Dale. I first got the White Hair Wisdom, which is slightly different, and then I got the Wandwood as a Kickstarter and got the Pocket Arboretum, which was the other deck with Matlock the Hair. And it is such a cool world of fantasy. Let me move these out of the way, and I'm hoping you can see these. They're a smaller card, so I might get the Wandwood ones, but when you look at the, so here we go, the characters, you've got these little characters here. Sometimes you get the standard hair, but you know, you've got this kind of curious world. It's a fantasy world, coming back to the Oak, Ash and Thorn idea, that love of fantasy, that love of something a bit different. You know, I adored books like The Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. You know, this world of fantasy, Roald Dahl, these little fantasy creatures and characters that they've created. So these decks would go in my cabinet of curiosity for their fantasy nature, for the world that they live in, because they are curious, curiouser and curiouser, of course. And they just go in as, oh, sorry, they go in as a set. So my cabinet of curiosities is a little bit, teeny bit different than other people's, because it's not quite got the same sort of unique decks in, or the unusual decks that some people have. But I think I've selected, for now, a reasonably good bunch of decks. I've got my Matlock the Hair and Winchett Dale collection, my Celtic Oracle. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, actually. Oops. No, that would be zooming in. So that didn't work, did it? Apologies. So I've got my Matlock the Hair decks. I've got my so I have my Matlock the Hair, I have my Celtic Oracle, my Matlock the Hair decks, my Tarot of the Magical Forest, the Musical Tarot, the Smoke, Ash, Embers and the Oak, Ash and Thorn decks, my Healing Waves because it's harder to come by, my Weird and Wacky playing cards from Patrick Valenza, and my Portal playing cards from James R. Eads, and my Brian Froud, the Labyrinth Tarot, and my Fairies Oracle. My pile of curiosity decks. I hope you've enjoyed this. Apologies if it was a little bit random. I really enjoy this tag, so I'm looking forward to seeing any more that people come up with and following on YouTube. Do post your comments below, and let me know if there are any other kind of videos or anything you'd be interested in me creating. In the meantime, I've got to head off and get ready for taking my son to watch some cricket, as the Brits do, and I shall be back again with you soon, I'm sure. Bye!